my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to be working on the next block from our Celebrates with Quilts book. This is the Piece and Quilt Sampler Sew Along, and this is the 9-inch Lady Tulip Finger Block. So let's jump right on in. Okay, so we're going to be working out of this Celebrates with Quilt book. This is the Piece and Quilt Sampler Sew Along, and we're going to be working on this Tulip Lady Fingers block. Now in the book it does have 2 tones, and if you're following exactly along with what the Fat Quarter Shop has recommended in their coloring, they're only going to have this set up with one contrasting color. So you'll have your background fabric and one contrasting color, but if you'd like to do it exactly like the book, these 2 on each corner are going to be a highlighted color. So just to let you know, I'm going to sew it out like it is on the Fat Quarter Shop's website, but I really was torn. I almost wanted to kind of deviate, but since I'm trying to show you how theirs works, then we'll just stick with the plan. I have gone ahead and cut out all of my pieces, and you know me, I would much prefer to work with triangles on a roll versus trying to cut out all these half square triangles the traditional way. So what I did, if you'd like to follow this directions instead of exactly what's in the book, is I just cut my background fabric and my contrasting color. I did it about 10 by 5. And this is actually going to give me a couple more than 12, but I know I'll use these half square triangles in something scrappy later on, so I'll just go ahead and sew all of those out. So once I have everything lined up, I'm going to give it a couple pins. And as you can see, I did not even cut my fabric super square. It's a little bit just kind of thrown together. I knew it would be big enough to cover the paper. And so I'm just going to come through and sew down all of these dotted lines. So if you're using triangle on a roll paper, I like to put my pins in with the direction that I'm going to be sewing, but keep in mind that as you're flipping this around, it is really easy to poke yourself with your pins as you start going a different direction. So I will go ahead and speed this up and let you guys see what we do next. That I forgot to drop my stitch length, so that means that the paper is going to be a little bit harder to pull off if I don't drop that. So I'm going to go ahead and just stitch back over that line I just did with a shorter stitch length. It's not going to hurt anything, it's still right on the same line, but that's going to help that paper be a little bit more perforated, because I like to be like at a 1.5 to a 1 even. Now that it's anchored down, I'm going to go ahead and pull those pins out so that I don't poke myself as I start to change direction. Okay, and whenever I have a big pattern of these, I'm always going to run my finger over all the lines, make sure I didn't miss any, because I've cut them apart before and then you have to go back and sew them again. So now we'll go over to the cutting station and we'll cut these apart. Okay, so first I like to cut off all my outside edges. I'm going to line up my ruler with that outside edge and give it a quick trim. And I use a lot of triangle paper, so I'm not super picky about which rotary blade I use. I change mine out kind of frequently, and I love to get the endurance blades so that they do last a little bit longer when I can. So I had initially kind of tried to keep like a separate rotary cutter for paper, but I just found that everything didn't work out as easily. So, okay, so now I'm going to cut the big lines because that leaves me fewer cuts. this out of the way. Bumped it right on out, didn't I? It's funny, sometimes some of these time savers where you line them up actually might not make it that much faster. Do this. That works better. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take our papers and just peel them off. It's really quite simple. You'll just fold it over and then it tears off just like a perforated packaging. So we'll go through and do the whole stack. If you have lovely children like I do, sometimes I can rope them into it. And it's a little bit selfish, I know, but for some reason, I don't know, it's, I guess like dealing with a sticker book, my daughter really likes to help out. Okay, so as you can see, my initial cut was kind of sloppy on the first round of fabric. It definitely saves you some time on the cutting table to start. There's a little bit of this paper peel off, but honestly, for the precision that it lends, I prefer it. Okay, so now that we have this finished, we will go ahead and press these to one. Okay, so first I'm just going to set my seams. And then I'm going to press to the dark. And then we'll come back and snip those little edges off before we press them open. Okay, so we're only going to need 12 of these, but I remember I did make a couple extras just to have a rectangular piece. So I'm going to go ahead and give them all the same haircut. Okay. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and press these open. This is a 9-inch block, and so there are going to be quite a few seams that all come together. If it was a 12, I might consider letting them nest, but I just feel like a lot of the quilts, the blocks in this quilt that I've made so far for these smaller blocks have just felt a little bit off or wonky, bulky seams to me if I press them to nest. All right, so now we get to go do the fun part. Okay, so now we get to put our first little mini block in here together. So we're going to have 4 pieces that come together. Again, if you're doing a highlight color that's got one additional, if you have a third color in this block, it's going to be this one that you switch out. So you're going to do a half square triangle pointed with the color towards the middle on opposite sides, and one with it pointed towards the outside, and then just your background fabric as your fourth. And we're going to make 4 of these. So first I'm going to sew this one onto this one. And if you're a pinner, please feel free. And we'll roll these together. And this is another situation where I really like the chain piecing. Because when we go over to the pressing table and we press them open, it's going to keep them in order for me so that I know then I'm going to want to sew this one onto this one. So let's go press that. Okay, so we're going to set our seams. And then I'm going to press this white one down so that the seam is away from my bulkier fabric. And then the other one, it's got a half square triangle on either side, so it's really not going to matter. So you could press these open, but I'm going to give this instructions a shot and see how it comes together. So now we'll take it back over to the machine and we'll sew our 2 sides together. Okay, so we've got it where it's pressed now, and we're just going to use that those 2 seams are nesting, and I'm going to see how this block comes out. If it feels too bulky, then I'll rip it and then go back and do it again with the seams pressed open. I am going to pay special attention to these 2 at the top because I want to make sure that they're really well aligned as I come through sewing. And then here at the bottom, it's on a white square, so it'll be fine. And as I start to get more and more of these points, I don't pin a lot, but when I've got a lot of stuff coming together, I like to hold it still. Okay, let's go press. Okay, so we're going to set the seam and then press it open. I'm going to press open towards this one white block. It does feel a little bit bulky and I need to trim that corner down some, but maybe just this last seam I can press open and see how that feels. Okay, so there's our first corner, and I'll do this 3 more times and meet you back here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we've finished up 1 block, and I'm going to go ahead and make the other 3. I will speed this up. Okay, so everything's all pressed. Now we're ready to build out the rest of our block. So we have our we have two sections left, I guess. So we have our center block. It's going to go right here in the middle. And I may need a bigger design board. Let's see if we can make it work. All right, and then we're going to put our 4 background fabrics in. So first off, I'm just going to flip this row over just like normal onto this one and sew down, and then I'll open it back up and put this one on, and then we'll go press it, and I'll come back with a bigger design board. Now I'm going to pay certain attention to where these points are all coming together. If you prefer to sew from the back, you can. It helps a lot when your seams are nested, but since mine are pressed open, I actually can see it through my background fabric pretty well. Again, looking for those points. And then I plop it back down on my design board. I'm going to double check it, make sure that I like where those points all came out, that I didn't cut anything off. Same thing up here at the top. And then I like to either wonder clip or pin these on just because I'm going to pick the whole thing up off the board. They're all still attached to each other. So I think my daughter stole my wonder clips again. Okay, so a quick and easy way to pin it, if you're not going to have it pinned exactly where and you're still going to want to be able to manipulate the fabrics, which is how I usually operate, I'll go ahead and flip these over, get them mostly aligned, and then as I'm sewing, I'm going to double check that positioning. So I'll get this one where we want it. And then I'm going to sew down from the other side just so I can, through that background, see where my points are going to be. I don't know if that's showing up on camera or not, but that's a nice way to be able to tell where you're going to end up on your fabric. If you can see through it. If you can't, you can usually feel it, or you can look at the seams in the back. Because I'd love to say that all of my seams are exactly 1/4 of an inch and I don't have to worry about that kind of thing, but that wouldn't be the truth. So now we'll go press it open. Okay, so first we'll set our seams. And then I'm going to press this block because there's nothing here in the middle. I'm going to press these towards the middle and the middle row towards the outside just to make it easier to deal with. So I'll do this from the back. And then this one's going to go towards the outside and then towards the inside again up here. And that'll make these 3 rows nest and be kind of easy to assemble. All right, let's go wrap it up. Okay, so we've got it all ready. I'm going to take one side. Here, I can grab a design board just so it lays flatter for us. All right, so I've got my 3 columns now, and now I'm just going to flip this one over, line up my seams and sew. And these are really easy because they're going to nest and there's no additional points. So I'm not going to pin this. I'm just going to roll with it. let's go give it a press. Okay, so we'll set our seams and then we will press it. Now, since there's so many seams here and so few in the middle, I'm just going to press towards the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and let a little steam come through because this is my final. Okay, thanks for sewing this out with me. This was a fun block and it came together quite nicely.